Hello friends and welcome to another edition of Led's Lap Guides. If you're new to this series, we offer a little bit of a different angle on lap guides as we utilize our very own Apex Visualizer. It's an overhead view to help you see those racing lines that you need to be striving for. This guide will be your resource for this week to use however you need. Feel free to watch the entire video or skip to one or two corners that are giving you trouble. This week we have Group 4 cars at Nurburgring GP Circuit and Group 3 at Red Bull Ring. Two real tracks that provide us with some real racing action. Let's take a look at how we break these corners down. Turn 1 is without a doubt super critical. It's where a lot of time can be made. It's where a lot of time can be lost. So the idea here really is to carry as much speed as possible through this corner. Looking at our Apex Visualizer can give us some good help here. So we have what's essentially just a slight open, so a bit beyond 90 degrees, and this does really give us a good idea of how we should be taking the corner. You really need to be getting a whole lot of turning done before you get to the apex, and you really need to cut the apex in a big way. You have to anticipate the bounce that you're going to get from that curb, and certain cars are going to handle that better than others, and then plan to go as wide as the track will let you. That's really critical over at the exit here. So what that looks like on the actual track is braking getting as wide as you possibly can and still maintain good grip for braking. You're banging down the gears, 5th, 4th, 3rd. Most cars you're going to want to exit in 3rd. I've been using some 2nd gear for extra rotation. It all depends on how you can get the car turned. So that's really critical. So we're braking in a straight line past the 50, and you really are turning with these tire marks that you see on the right on the pavement here. So if you need 2nd gear for added rotation, but really you need to be on the throttle by this point right here, okay? No later than now. Got to be on the throttle before you get to the apex. Clobber the apex. Expect the bounce from this yellow part of the sausage. Probably need to lift in this area right here to see how your car reacts to the bounce, and then track out all the way over here. Even if you go this wide, that's fine. It seems to be, and the penalty line here is tricky, but it seems to be if you end up getting back to the pavement before the curbing, the white of the curbing ends, you're not going to get a penalty. So that's your objective there, okay? All right, now for the tightest corner in the whole track. This thing's a booger. Big braking zone, right? So looking at our visualizer, about like that. And so this is what you're trying to do here. You're trying to get a nice wide entrance, but you do need to dive a little bit into the corner. So don't go way out here. That's going to take too much time. Unless you're trying to set up for a pass on the next straightaway, then that's not a bad idea. But for time trialing, really need to brake heavily in a straight line, trail brake, get the car turned. Now, what I have found, because it's really hard to gain traction at the beginning of the acceleration point here, what I have found is getting at least a little bit on the throttle right here and be in the gear that you want to accelerate in. If your car accelerates out of here in 1st, be in 1st. If your car accelerates out of 2nd, be in 2nd. Nothing's going to come out in 3rd here. That's crazy. What are you talking about? And then so blip the throttle here, get the traction, get the tires moving, and get that grip started so that when you really get on the throttle out here, it'll grip and it should be okay. Just make sure you got your wheels straight. Okay, so the way that looks here on the actual track. Can't really go wide, it's too slippery with the green over there, so you're really staying right here. Banging down the gears, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, turning nice and wide, getting the car turned, and this is where you're applying that little bit of throttle right there, okay? Just like that. Get Get those tires down, and here, full throttle out. All right, so this corner here it requires a lot of patience. So let's go ahead and bring up the visualizer once again, widen that just a little bit, tighten this just a little bit. So your objective again is get a little bit of wide entrance and then tighten to the apex, but you have to be more patient. Another hard element of this is that the track is not banked in your favor, it's negative banked, it's banked the other way. So that's the added reason why you have to wait for this corner. So you definitely actually aren't really getting onto the throttle until about the apex, the true apex of the corner, because you're just not going to make it if you get on any sooner than that. What that looks like on the actual track, bringing in the gears. A lot of cars are going to need first gear for added rotation, and that's what I use. So you're letting it hook in, getting that car to yank, and then on the throttle right about now. I exit in second for this car, and out you go. For the sequence here, we have two very similar corners that need to be handled in a fairly similar way. So what we're looking at here is a slight wide entrance, gradually tightening till you get to the apex in this vicinity here. Really the key part about this, how to be fast on this turn, is make sure there's a smooth deceleration all the way to this. If you brake too hard, the car is going to understeer and you're going to end up too wide, and you're going to lose time because of that. So you need that perfect amount of trail braking. Come off the brakes just right. Use a gear down if you need to a little bit to get that extra rotation so that you tighten to the apex, and then really you feel really good at this point, and you know you're going to make the corner. What that looks like in the actual track here. So you're in fourth most likely, down to third, down to second to get that extra tightening, and then up to third for exit speed, and out you go. For this corner here, gotta keep the left tires to the left of the white line before you get to that where that escape road or that other part of the track actually connects with the main track. Otherwise you're gonna get a pen. Again, getting the car to tighten here is extra important. So it really is the same scenario as before with the other one, except maybe a slightly tighter line, something like this. Okay, so yeah, you're starting wide, but you're getting it tight. You're decelerating, and you can be on the throttle actually a little bit earlier because you have a forgiving exit in a sense afterwards. So be on the throttle in this vicinity here for this turn. What that looks like on the actual track is coming down here, braking just before you get to that other track. Second gear, turning in, getting the car to pull into the apex, up to third, out you go, full throttle. Should make it no problem. Be prepared to be this wide on exit. And then be prepared to hug it a little bit so that you don't go too wide. You actually lose a little bit of time if you don't steer enough to get to the right. For this next sequence, you want to be as wide as possible. You're either probably fourth or fifth gear, depending on your car. And this is exactly where you're braking right here. So you're not trying to waste too much time. You are trying to get more turning done before the apex. Get the car rotated so that by the time you get to the apex, you're full throttle, out you go. And basically, that's all it really is. The key is to make sure you're clipping the apex. It's really easy to go too deep for this particular turn. So what that looks like on the actual turn is you're coming down here, banging down to third, critically clipping this apex. And honestly, for some cars, even if you get a little bit onto the grass on the right, that's actually going to help you rotate some. So not a bad idea to do that either. Full throttle though through here. If you have to lift a little bit, that's probably okay. You don't want to go too wide because if your right tires go on the green, it's a penalty. Braking right here, basically as these tires on the right, these tire tracks on the right, as they are peeling off to the right, that's kind of my window for braking. And it's the same scenario as the previous one, essentially. Maybe it's slightly more open, barely. But again, getting the car rotated is the critical. Getting the car rotated is the critical element here, where we're making sure to get the car turned. And there's a bit of a dip right here, so the compression right here is really critical to hit that close to the apex. If you go too wide, you don't really get that benefit because that compression gives you added grip. So what that looks like on the actual track, indeed. Little second gear for rotation. Get the car's weight transferred all the way on the outer tires. Back up to third, clobber the apex, full throttle out of here. Measure it to see if you need to lift a little bit, but the idea would be don't lift. And that's how we do it at Red Bull Ring. We have the first turn one, nice tight hairpin. It can be brutal, there's no doubt about that. So let's take a look at how this would appear on our apex visualizer. We're going nearly 180 degrees. And this really does depict the line that you're looking for. Now, I would say the radius is even tighter on the real track, but you are braking heavily in a straight line, and you're really curling around so that you get the car pointed in the direction that you want. That's really key. It's not so bad with an all-wheel drive car and a Group 4 car that's, has less power than a Group 3 cars, but even so, it'll get you that extra half a tenth, even full tenth if you do it really well. Back to the actual track here, we're basically thinking and looking at this, banging down the gears second, getting that last bit of rotation in first, and I want us to be on the throttle before we get to the dip of this apex, okay? Likely in second gear for most of us, okay? So that's how that's gonna look, down like that. Full throttle through here. Depending on your car, you make this left here, and we won't use the visualizer for this part, but you really yank the car to the left, and it's either, as you're approaching the apex, it's either lifting and downshifting, braking and downshifting. It depends on how the car is and how much speed you've carried through here. But that's how you're looking at that. Feel free to go as wide as this. You don't seem to get any dirty tires, and it really helps your next entrance. Braking point is right in this vicinity here. I kind of judge it by where the green turns into that grassy grain up ahead. When I'm at this distance right here, I know I need to brake. You might end up being able to use something different, but that's what I'm using at least. And this is probably one of the most critical corners in the whole track, okay? So as you're approaching this is all about where we are sacrificing speed in order to gain maximum exit speed, okay? So we're gonna use this as our example here for this case. So we're coming through here, and we're keeping it nice and tight through this part. And we're letting the car come out just a little bit more. You know what? Let's tighten this just a little bit more. So we're coming through here, and for Group 3 cars, it's a lift before you get to this second apex. But if you have taken this proper and you get wide enough and turn in just right at the right time, you can exit through this flat. And that's how you get the most speed. If you end up having to lift, especially in race, do it. You don't want to go too wide and get dirty tires, but that's how I would approach this. I think that's the best way to go about it. The way that looks on the actual track is like this. So we're diving in here. Some cars especially, you want to use first gear to get that extra tightness. Plan on your right tires to go onto the rumble strips. Be that far. I want us, as we're accelerating, no later than this part right here, okay? Be accelerating at this spot. But I want us to point the car to the roller coaster in the distance. You see that there, right? Point the roller coaster in the distance, just like that. Full throttle still, and then yank the steering over to the right. Get it so that when you yank it and you're full throttle through here, you clip all of this apex, okay? If you do that, you will be fast. You will be very, very fast through this section. Okay. Track out all the way out here. It doesn't seem like there's any way to get a penalty if you go wide there, so don't worry about it. Go as wide as you need to. Breaking point for this is right as you get past the white line on the right here. This is where I'm braking. I'm braking pretty late, and this is all about the setup for the next turn. Really, it's very critical. So you're definitely getting a lot of the turn done. You're hugging the apex. The only difference is you're not going to track out wide. This visualizer assumes a straightaway after every turn, basically. So we actually want to keep it tight over this way, okay? So what that looks like on the actual track is just like this. We're rolling through here. Wide entrance, down to fourth to third, coming through here, and try not to be any wider than the middle of the track right here, okay? Get the car over to the right, and this turn is tighter than a 90-degree, so we need to actually be even more patient as we get the car turned. This one I think gets people a lot. They brake a little bit too hard, too late and too hard, okay? Braking too late and too hard, what happens is you end up in this vicinity. You end up wide of the apex every time. Make sure once you get the car straight, you're braking, you're getting the car turned. Use some second gear if needed to rotate the car, and launch it. Don't be accelerating anywhere after the apex. Be in this vicinity here, not out here. What that looks like on the actual track. All right, so what that looks like here is yanking the car over here, getting the second, and braking nice and gently, getting the car to come in so that you're on the throttle bar right here, fully, with an all-wheel drive car, and you make the corner, okay? We're braking just as we pass this concrete here. We get to this grass, get to this drainage section right here. This is where we're braking right now, okay? This is a beyond 180-degree turn, okay? So this is very unique in that regard. So let's see how we want to be taking a turn like this. You can take this wide to narrow like this, okay? That is viable. However, I feel like this, you actually lose time by going too wide. Now, circumstances in a race might dictate that you do this, but in an actual qualifying time, I would recommend making this a double apex, okay? Just like this, you're clipping this first apex, you're going deep, and whenever you have a double apex, what is the most important thing to consider? Where you're at your slowest, that's at the bottom of the V or the U, however you want to look at the shape of this, right in this vicinity here. You're getting the car turned while it's slow, and you're stomping on the throttle here so that you can exit and make the corner. All right, that's what that looks like there. Let's see the actual track. Clipping this first apex, under braking here, first gear for rotation, letting it turn around, back on the throttle, clip the next apex, and out you go. Schumacher S can be taken flat. It's all about this turn in. Now I use my driving marker, that really helps me, but you could also use the brown patches in the grass right here. Once you get to the brown patches, that's when you yank the steering wheel to the left. Go up this curb. We want to clip that, and feel free to clip this part, so forth. Right at, I think it's more like right at the 100 board. And what this looks like on the visual, we got a 90-degree turn, and it basically looks quite a bit like that. We're attempting to get a lot of the turn done before we get to the apex. Don't consider the apex to be right in the middle of the turn. Consider it to be a little bit afterwards. And truly, you don't want to go too wide on this one because you have an immediate left-hander, and the left-hander is tighter than 90 degrees. So let's look at that for a moment. Down to third gear, clipping all of this apex. And really, you want to try to not go on to the curbing on the right. If you've gone to the curbing on the right, it's not the end of the world. But you're going to have a lot more distance to travel to get back over to the left if you do it that way. So now with this one, now we have tighter than 90 degrees. So it's a little bit more like this. Let's go ahead and expand it just a little bit. Gives it a little more like what it is. So again, getting, you know, taking the car a little bit deep, letting the car trail brake and roll into this corner and trying to get on the throttle right before the apex in this vicinity here. That's really what we're trying to do. Actual track, once again, like this. You're in third gear again. Some cars may want some second to get that extra rotation, but that's your line. On the throttle right here, out you go. Braking just as the 100 board goes past is the idea on this one. The chicane kind of bounces you around real good, doesn't it? So we're looking at a 90 to 90 is what this is. And this is a great representation of what we're trying to do, really. So we're braking in a straight line, heavy braking zone, trying to get on the throttle right here, actually. And we're trying to clobber this. You know, it's how much of the apex you want to take is up to you. Do you want to risk bouncing like a trampoline? Go for it. If you don't, you know, go a little bit wider, and that'll be okay. But that's really the idea, is being at your slowest right here, getting on the throttle, and then mashing through all of this. What that looks like on the actual track. Go through this, get the turn in, second gear, out you go, clobber that, clobber that. Yeah. This final turn, I think, is interesting, because I feel like many of us don't realize how much of a turn it is. Look at it on the top right of the map there, and you see that there's quite a bit of turn to do. That's more like it. So we're trying to get as much of the turn done as possible. We really have to be patient because there's a lot of turn to be done. Roll the car through here, get it nice and tight, and just as you get to the barrier, actually, is where, right before the barrier is where you want to start getting on the throttle, which is really in this vicinity here. And you go through that apex, you make the corner. What that looks like on the actual track, braking all the way through here, banging down the gears, braking just as there becomes more dirt on the left over here is what I'm looking for. Might be what you want to look for too. Come all the way through here, let it roll in, and then you get just like that, and you're on the throttle no later than right here, basically, is what you're going for. And that, my friends, is a lap guide at Nurburgring GP Circuit. And now that's going to do it for this edition of Led's Lap Guides. Please don't forget to give this video a like, and if you haven't subscribed to the Ledpencil channel yet, please do so you can stay up to date on all of the live streams, other videos, and shorts that we put out on a regular basis. We'll see you soon, friends.